Friends, welcome back to the Ascending Crows podcast. Today is a very special episode as our producer, Manni, takes the wheels and gives us an exploration of music theory and the psychology behind understanding music theory and the way that this sort of relates to the meditative practice. Joining Manni today is his roommate and partner in many projects, Cassidy Harris. Cassidy is a student of musical theater and acting and singing, and offers us a really great perspectives on certain technical aspects of vocal training and really how this just relates to breathing and spiritual practice in general. So this is a really cool episode. Manni really opened my mind a lot in terms of how sound really relates to spiritual practice. So sit back and enjoy this wonderful musical theory exploration.
Ascending Crows Podcast.
Welcome.
Yes.
Start to breathe. Feel the sounds. You've tuned into a very special episode of the Ascending Crows podcast.
Yes.
Today, the tables have turned, and I am your host, Manni Festo, or I am your guest host. And I'll be leading you through some mindful musical exercises. So start to get in tune with these sounds. Let them connect to your breath and your body. And start to feel at one with the music. You may open your eyes. And let's begin. Music is extremely important to me, and I see it as one of the things that connects people in a very cool and unique way, because it transcends languages and stuff like that. And it's kind of, I feel like, and what I'm going to try to show today as it relates to our usual topic of meditation, is how natural the processes involved with music are to our bodies, and how naturally we just adapt to certain musical things. So the first exercise we're going to do centers around one of the things that is very connective when it comes to music, which is rhythm. Because rhythm, and you can join me, put your hand on your heart and feel the beat. You can breathe into it and feel the rhythm that is already inside of your body. Sometimes that rhythm is fast. Sometimes that rhythm is slow, and it serves as your constant beat to your life. And that beat moves in many different directions. And sometimes you have to try to get your beat to align with somebody else's. And the human brain is very adept at matching your body to other things around you, living or not, depending on what you hear. And rhythm is the main example of that. I learned about these things in a book called This Is Your Brain on Music by David Levitin, I suggested. He talked about how that developed, that sound to brain to body movement connection formed from our days as hunters. Because if you heard something scary, a lion roaring at you, you knew it was time to fight back, and your body reacted accordingly. And so these things show us that the sounds we hear and the movements our bodies naturally know to make are extremely connected. So feel your heartbeat. Feel what rhythm it is. Start to feel that rhythm. And now let's see how we can sync up rhythms to what we hear. Start to listen to this. Feel this 4/4 tempo. And start to move your body. You can open your eyes. We're all going to move to this rhythm together using our arm. 2, Start moving with that. And let this connect to your own heartbeat and see how it's connecting all of us right now. See how your vision influences your senses when it comes to keeping a certain rhythm. Feel the rhythm and be in tune with it. And now we're going to try something to see how in tune with the rhythm we really are. I'm going to turn this off, but you're going to keep moving your arm to this rhythm. You can keep your eyes open and make sure you stay in tune with each other. Ready? Now. Observe how you stay in line with others and what this feels like on your body, and see how much you can keep to the original beat. And now, let's go a step further, and we're all going to close our eyes in a few beats and try to see if you can keep this rhythm with each other and with the original beat. Ready? Close your eyes. And open your eyes. Notice how easily we stayed in sync with each other and how that feels on your body to know what's around you and know to keep in rhythm with it. Now, let's see how well we stuck to the original beat. Keep going. Seemed like we were kind of hitting on it. So observe how that feels. And why is it that we can stay so in tune even when we shut some of our senses off? Now we can try and see how it goes. You can switch your hand if it gets tired, because I'm sure it is. Let's see how this goes. Keep going. Let's see how this feels. And if it's easier or harder. Do the same thing. In 1 second, try to get this beat ingrained into your body, and keep going. Keep your eyes open, because we also want to stay in tune with each other. We're all going towards the same goal. And now, close your eyes. And one last time. Let's see. Notice if you are out of rhythm and the process by which now that it's going faster, if it's easier or harder to stay in rhythm and not knock shit over. And now, let's see. Notice if it's easier or harder when it's faster to stay in this beat. Is it because there's less time in between, so it's easier to keep the steadiness? Let's see how this goes. Try this. Stay in this beat now. Observe the difference of when it's very slowed down and the movement required for it. And now try to stay in it and stay with each other. Keep the beat going in your own head. And observe how it feels to even try to be out of beat with the people that you see. Does it feel weird? Does it feel out of step? Does it feel like it's natural to go with the rhythm that's around you? Now try to keep that with your eyes closed. Now open your eyes. Notice how what the difference is and how it feels to come out and notice how together we still were. And now let's see where we were. Not too bad. Did we speed up? We did speed up. So notice, a lot of musicians, just a quick tidbit, a lot of people try to say, oh, fast music, that's impressive. Musicians might tell you, a bit more hard to play really slow music.
I think drums especially.
Yes, you can rest your arms down. So let's talk about how that felt, first and foremost, and what we think about just how our bodies react to different rhythms and times.
Joe, Cass, you guys have anything to say?
I feel like as a musician, to some degree myself, I felt like I intuitively plugged into some kind of tricks that I do to try and stay on beat, and they have served me well for the most part, but sometimes...
You're breathing.
Yeah, that helped
I was
us.
going to say the same.
It helped
That's
us.
helpful.
Yeah, so
But
there was a couple things
with your breath.
There was a couple tricks that I've done. I've played drums, I play bass, I've played guitar, etc. And particularly from drums, probably, where I picked up having to play with a metronome, and I was trying to physically recreate a metronome. So actually, like, I would try to I tried to do what a conductor does, but without cheating, where I make my arm motion based on the beat, but on the downbeat, drop down with it. And I didn't actually honestly try to pay attention to what anyone else's rhythm was, because I just felt like that was going to confuse me.
Yeah.
But if I did play the role of conductor, I guess that might have helped other people.
That's interesting. I felt kind of the opposite, where at certain moments when I could kind of tell that, like on the last one we were speeding up, and on the extra fast one there were times when we were slowing down. But and even though my brain knew that, it felt wrong to try to keep to the rhythm, and felt more right to try to keep
to each other
in sync with everyone else.
Yeah. What is that? What do you think that tells you just about human nature?
Something about human nature,
Like,
just wanting
do we need to
be connected.
It's not even about being, we think of this beat as being the right beat, right?
Right.
In this moment. It's not even about doing what you think might be right. It's about doing, sometimes in your deepest nature, just doing what's around you. And, that kind of, it kind of speaks to your raw senses.
Absolutely. And, just in terms of going through the actual practice, I found it that you have to place so much more, especially when you want to get slower, so much more emphasis on that downstroke. It's really, you take your time back up to sort of understand the spacing between each note and where to hit it. And then if you try to go down, at the same pace, you're like, oh, wait, I'm not going to reach it there in time. So you have to be so much more decisive about that stroke, really. And I just find it interesting where the attention goes when you're doing an exercise like this.
Yeah, like what are the ways, that's why, people say like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. What are the ways that we like know how to keep time between things, kind of a thing. It's all inherent to like just humans' understanding of like, timing and like coming together through time, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's proceed, and now let's see how this is where the vocal training comes in.
Okay.
Now let's see how we can get our voices in tuned with what we have. So sit up straight. Let's take a nice deep breath. Let's get that. Let's do some humming. Let's see what our voices are capable of. Go low. And now let's do a full sweep. Let's see how all the pitches that our voices can make. Start from your lowest and go up high. Notice the different sensations within your own body depending on what kind of pitch you're making. And Cass, I'm sure this is reminding you of all your theater school.
Lots.
Oh yeah, good times, right? This is how you warm up. This is how a lot of singers warm up their voice. And this is how you kind of figure out what I can sing and what I can sing well. So what does it tell you guys when you do the low note? Do it again. Notice your posture. What posture helps you do this? Crunch up a little bit and do
Chest
it.
forward, I feel like.
Lowering your chin.
Right. Try to put your chin up and try to do it. It becomes a lot harder.
You can only go so low.
Now try to hit your highest note. We won't judge where your highest is. Try to do the same thing. Elongate your neck. Yeah, you have to like sit in it when it's low. Like you have to say it with your chest, right? There's a reason.
Precisely, yeah.
There's a reason why Kevin Hart said that.
Right.
And then it's just interesting because that's the thing. The way just sound acoustics works.
Right.
It's all about, all the higher pitched instruments, right? You'll see they're probably smaller, stretched thin, because that's what produces higher sounds. And then the opposite, a big bass, it's gigantic. Yeah. Any acoustic bass player hates their life because they have to lug that thing around all the time. So our bodies and so many things around us are able to produce these sounds, right? Why is it that only certain sounds maybe sound great with each other when other sounds just don't sound so great? That's the question behind music, I think, and to think about. Because to walk you through some of this, let's try some experiments.
That's dissonance.
Exactly. How did you know that, Cass?
How did I know that, Manny?
Oh, we'll talk about that later in the show. But well, I'll do all my teaching. But that's the thing. Why is dissonance? You can't really, it's hard to explain, but you just know what sounds good and what does not sound good. And you don't know exactly, you might not know exactly how to explain it because you know the way that pitches should get put together deep in your brain. So to experiment, Sam, give me that note. Now above that, that's an octave. Cass, give me that note. Now sing them together. Now that's what we call an octave. These are the same notes, C and C, just 8 complete notes apart, the same thing, just in different registers of the instrument. So now you know that sound, this interval to here, here to here is an octave. So can you start from here and do an octave above that? Anyone can do it.
Hit the note.
Joseph, how did you know that? I didn't play the other note for you. So that's an octave though. And maybe you could say that's a little easier because that's technically the same note, G and G. So, but what if we do another type of interval? That's an E, if you must know. And then a fifth above that is B. So hear them together. And in fact, don't just hear them. Sam, sing an E. Joe, sing a B. Sing together. So that's a fifth. Remember that. Now let's try. Can you sing a fifth above that? I'll give you the E to B one more time. Now start it on D. A bit harder because it's not the same note. And they're not right next to each other, so it's hard to swivel all the way up there. Mm-hmm. Now, what if we do, this is a third. Cass, hit the F. Joe, hit the A. One more time. And then. You did a fifth.
I did.
You did a fifth.
I did.
Here, this is the next one. Here, I'll give you one more. So wait again. Hear it. That's a third. Oh man.
I can't.
Let's try another one. Maybe one that's it's called a perfect interval. So it should be more perfect. Let's do. That's a fourth. Try it. Now.
don't know if that was close at all.
You did a fifth.
I did fifth, I think, right? Fourth is hard
It's hard,
for me.
right? So let's try this. So here's the third. Sing that both notes. Now fifth. Now a seventh. Now let's see. The seventh. That's it. And all together, they blend to be this.
It's a beautiful chord.
Great chord.
Beautiful chord. Seventh chords you use all the time. So that it shows how harmony is like ingrained into us. We know exactly how to blend with the sounds around us, blend with each other. And so that's cool. I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts on that real quick? Before I show you the
Sevenths are hard, I think.
Sevenths are hard. Because they're so
But when you practice them, they're very rewarding.
You think that's because they're
You
so
want to
close.
go up to an octave.
Exactly.
There's a lot I can say about harmonization
right.
and the importance of it. I'll save that for the conversation. But I just think it's got such a therapeutic effect when you do this with other people.
Yes.
You know, and especially for me. You know, I'm really, I'd say tone deaf, so I almost sort of need a reference point.
Exactly. It becomes easier. Right?
Absolutely.
And someone's like, give me an E. You can't just give you an E out of nowhere, but someone's like, hear it. It's just that's why, I don't know, that's like the cool part about how our hearing sense is so tied to, the rest of our body. So now hearing all of let's say all the pitches kind of jump up together creates a different effect. Because now you're hearing, different ones at the same time, but then hearing them sequentially might have a whole different effect on you. And of course, I just played a major key signature. So we know how to harmonize. We know how to do that. Can we know kind of the next pitch in the sequence? Sing it. So you know kind of what to expect, right?
Mm.
Let's try it again with one that you haven't even heard yet. Another key signature. So you know. That seventh note is called the leading tone.
Yes.
In music theory. So it very, very much feels like that's, you want to go back to that tonic note, the octave up from that. But what if I tried in the middle? That was me. But yeah, so isn't that interesting that you know what's coming? It's like you know what's next because, again, these sounds are so ingrained into you. So I'm going to show you guys how much you guys already know how to make certain music, right? So follow me. How'd you know? Did you read it?
Yeah.
And now? So, that's fun to talk about.
Might have woke up the neighborhood with that.
Exactly. So, I gave you the first two notes, and that's it. That was the pentatonic blues scale. Or just the pentatonic scale. Right?
Mhm.
Used very often in pop music, as it sounds. So it feels kind of inherent, right?
Mhm.
And now I kind of open everything up for discussion, because that's kind of the last piece to show you how much you know how to, like, your brain inherently just kind of knows how to make music, right? Just from what you're seeing, just from what's around you, things like that. So I don't know. Thoughts on that? And then Sam, you can take your show back.
Manny, thanks for leading us through that exercise. That was very interesting and very informative. You really have a great way to break down this and make it so accessible for so many people.
Thank you.
And so I guess my first question is, you know, where did your interest in music start, and specifically, where did your interest in creating music start, and what are some of your deepest influences for creating?
It started, when did it start? I mean, my mom taught me piano when I was a kid, and so like that was just kind of a thing that like I did. And I mean, y'all, yeah, you guys knew me. I started, the first thing I started doing was rapping, and I don't know, I always kind of, whenever I wrote rhymes, I wasn't just like writing, you know, people, you know, Eminem writing on the bus, he's just writing shit because that's what comes to him. I would do that at times, but more often than not, I would be writing songs with like a clear vision on how the final result was going to sound. I had the whole, you know, the effects are going to come in here. And so I just started thinking more about the ways that music is made. And then from there, you know, learn more. I took a break from piano because, you know, when you're 13, you're like, that's not cool. And like, you know, do stupid shit. But then I got back into it later on, learned all about music and how to make it, the business of it in college and everything. And college especially is when I started learning about more like sound science, and kind of now I'm trying to fuse it, I guess, to talk about the ways that sound and music, you know, like what they all have to do with each other, I guess. But yeah, always just been into it, you know, from the start, always listening to music. And then I think that kind of fueled my desire to, like, again, whenever I was writing lyrics, I was crafting in my head like a full song from that, you know?
Right.
Yeah. Good times. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. One of the things that really most that I take from this is the importance of having a community, and the importance of aligning yourself with other people who are working towards something similar. You know, it's so much easier to find harmony when you have a partner to bounce off of, and what I draw this in terms of comparison is something called the Sangha, and that is used in, you know, Buddhist communities. The Sangha is the community, right? So when you take your formal vows as a Buddhist, you take your vows in the three jewels, which are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the importance of the Sangha is that it's this thing that you rely on, you know, this reference point that you can use as a way to, you know, help your own practice and sort of stay on that path. So I'd like to just, you know, to tell us the importance and really the benefits of harmonizing with someone else. Why is that so important for developing our own practice, and why is that so important for the collective group?
It's interesting. I think one thing I said, I think at the beginning of the exercise, was like, music is like the universal language, right? Everyone knows it is that. And it's very, I think of it as, would you say why it's important to harmonize with the people? Because, you know, I've seen people of like different, people who don't even speak the same language, you know, they couldn't converse with each other, you know, speaking wise, but you see people play together, and like, you know, if I do a little like, you know, then you could be like da 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 da, and like, you know how to mimic that. Right. So it's kind of like through, that's what you're saying, right? Why is it important to do that? Because I think, like, you know, for me, it makes it, I feel like it makes people able to kind of see through the BS of other reasons why we kind of see people as different. Because, you know, when someone plays something that you like, you know, you like it, and it's like, it's natural, it's inherent, it's involuntary. Right. You know, you dance when you know, there's a lot of people who probably hate Mexicans. They hear some salsa music playing, and they can't help it, you know? That's the most extreme example, but like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It'd be like that.
There's an interesting connection. I remember this was in an article when I was a kid, that there's actually part of your exercise was connecting the heartbeat, right. to the rhythm of music, and there's a belief that it's actually kind of the opposite than what we would expect, meaning that music kind of comes from a very, very early time in human history where people were trying to harmonize with their heartbeat. Like, that's where music initially comes from. That's sort of like the root of percussion, which is potentially one of the oldest musical traditions that we still see to this day, just because percussion is so broad. It can be drumming on a log, it can be drumming on then it became an animal hide, right? We still drum on animal hides. We do synthetics, we do electronics, all that stuff, but we're not really changing. I don't think we're really changing the root of it that much, which I think does connect to harmonize the heartbeat, and I think it also connects with community as well, things that are tenets of early man.
Right.
I mean, I think it's definitely, well, for me at least, but I think inherently, without even thinking about it, it's maybe a lot less about yourself and it's more about kind of successfully connecting with the person that you're harmonizing with, whether that's actually musically or, if you're dancing, you get in sync in a physical way. And I think it's just there's something super satisfying about that when if you're singing with someone else and you get to that like perfect harmony, it's it's an awesome feeling.
Right.
And
It's
you're just like, you're connected on it's less of a personal level, and it's just, you kind of forget that you're individual human beings and you're kind of just one entity of sound.
So Cass, if you could explain just a little bit about what is it, that beginning process of really starting to understand your vocal cords as an instrument. What is it like to first get attuned with that, and what is it like when you first really see yourself harmonizing with either your coach or your partner or whatever like that?
Well, first of all, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of internalizing too. My voice teacher used to really stress to me about being super in tune with how you're using your throat, specifically, more than just your vocal cords, because there would be times when I would go to my voice lesson and I have a cold and a sore throat and expecting myself to not sound as good, and she would always tell me that I actually would sound my best when my throat was sore, because I would naturally, instinctively not sing onto my throat, and I would kind of naturally just open up the airways so that the sound waves weren't like hitting the sore part of my throat, and that ends up being a much cleaner, more like bellowing sound. Because I'm sure you've heard, and Manny, I know you know, but if someone's singing, you can hear the difference between if their throat is closed or if their throat is open.
Right.
And so just with a lot of practice and trial and error, and also being able to hear that difference, gets you to kind of almost be able to figure that out physically, and then it just becomes natural. You can hear when you're too tight.
Yeah. And that's why vocal coaches always, get you to really get into sing from your chest, not from your throat. There's all types of ways that you have to
from the bottom of your
the diaphragm, probably, right?
Stomach.
For different that's the real shit.
Yeah.
Definitely don't sing from your throat.
It's definitely a lot of concentrating on, and this is really emphasizes how your body is your instrument. There are you have to concentrate on certain parts of your body,
right,
in order to focus in on how to, where to direct your sound or where to take your sound from. So you think of it like the bottom of your stomach,
absolutely,
or your throat or your chest, and they all create different sounds. Or you open your mouth wider, or you open your mouth, you close your mouth, and
Well,
it's cool.
it's so cool how just simple focus on a certain part of our, mainly in our torso, a certain part of the body opens up our breathing, because really I see such a parallel to the martial arts, because we're taught to breathe all the way down into our belly, because that keeps us connected to our breathing, that keeps our oxygen and carbon dioxide intake more efficient. And so that makes us have, more energy, our stamina is higher. But also what's really important to the martial art that I practice specifically, Kendo, is something called a kiai, or kiop, which is like a spirit shout. And the high level masters say they can tell how good you are at the martial art by hearing this, because they're either hearing if you're yelling from your throat, or if you're yelling from the bottom of your belly and your diaphragm.
Perhaps a
And
demonstration,
it's
Sam.
I'd rather not. But
Yeah, we got neighbors, so.
but
Okay.
it's so cool how you can just tell the experience someone has, like you were saying before, just by listening to them. You can tell how open their throat is, and it's also just the more you breathe with by focusing onto your belly, you're also just using the entire capacity of your lungs as well.
Which just makes for it to not only sound better but feel better.
Absolutely.
You take the deeper you go, the longer you can hold your notes, and the less strained you feel.
Yeah.
That was going to be my next question to you, Cass. Is what have you ever sort of do you ever see yourself sort of slipping into a state just by when you practice your vocalization over a long period of time? Is there any sort of just benefit from the an art form like this?
You mean in terms of how it connects to the rest of my life?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think it connects a lot. I mean, I think that obviously, first of all, breathing is probably maybe the number one most important thing that we do. And once you're in
Fabulous
tune
thing.
with that, and you're really focusing on that, and you really master the proper way to breathe, you can then go on to do so many things
Absolutely.
more successfully and more comfortably too. And it's also, it's super physical. It's like a physical sport almost. You just feel better when you're in tune with your body.
Absolutely.
You feel more grounded. You feel more accomplished. It's also a good way to get really in touch with your core.
It is.
And your core strength.
Yeah.
And also on a slightly selfish note, it just feels good to know that I can do that.
Because you rock it.
It's fair enough.
I can do that.
Yeah. Anything that takes a level of discipline, you feel good after you accomplish that.
And you can also then teach yourself how to apply that to
Absolutely.
everything else.
Right. I was going to say, it wasn't until I got into the theater world where I saw that performers in general, singers, actors, all that, you said it's like a sport. If you're like a singer, actor, theater actor specifically, you kind of have to maintain your body kind of like an athlete does. You have to be very good shape because you got to put on these very physical shows all the time, and you have to sing most of the times. That's crazy.
Yeah, you have to sing while you're dancing.
Yeah.
You have to sing while you're saying lines, and you also, big difference between theater and recording.
Yeah.
Which is why you get so many modern, I would say more often modern artists who can, sound good in a recording studio, but they might not sound as good live.
Right.
And that is all about, and something that people, who do musical theater excel at,
Right.
is to be able to project properly. And that is a lot of physical discipline.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For years, and you can lose that. And the help of auto-tune also helps those recording artists.
Mm.
Probably can't even sing, actually. The auto-tune helps.
So I guess, Manny, I have a question. What's your opinion on? Because it seems like it's more than the norm to, for lack of a better word, adulter your voice and modify it. What's your opinion on how heavily we can modify something, but do it in a way that we're trying to pretend like it's not? Do you think that this this loses some authenticity, or do you think that this should be up to the artist to manipulate, alter,
like modify in terms of like changing our voice
yeah,
to be more
to just sound maybe just whatever we think is more pleasant. I think I think of artists like Neil Young who don't necessarily have a nice voice, but it's so unique.
Yeah.
And really it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it resonates so deeply with his music. I guess do we lose a certain degree of authenticity to the art if we keep going in and doctoring it?
Like the people like Neil Young, James Brown, Bob Dylan, people who just kind of rely on just having a different sounding voice.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. It's
Johnny
like
Cash.
some people are just gifted with something unique, and some everyone has like their certain thing, right? And some people just have a very different voice. So in terms of like, are you saying people who don't have like a voice that's unique, but they try to make it like?
No, actually, I mean the opposite. I mean people who are trying to. Really
trying to sound too perfect.
Sound too perfect, conform to a what we consider the standard of a beautiful sounding voice instead of embracing maybe their slight imperfections that make them unique.
Yeah, I'm with that pretty much. That like I think a lot of music in general would benefit people who don't try to make it sound too perfect, and definitely with all the technology, I think that's kind of what's fueling that kind of like need for perfect in so much music now,
right.
Because you're able to. I remember just learning about this when I learned about recording. It was like, it's cool to learn about it when they did it on tape, and you couldn't do hundreds of takes. It was kind of just like, just do it, and if you're not right on key, fuck it. And,
right.
We're not gonna edit it to be the exact right pitch, because that's in terms of artistry, that's like way more raw and authentic.
Right.
You know what I mean? I joked about auto-tune. Obviously, that's the biggest example of trying to make something sound perfect, but that's the thing. And I think like going into music with that mindset of like, I'm not gonna make this sound like perfect. Lauryn Hill did that. We were listening to Lauryn Hill for the warm-ups, and
perhaps not a coincidence.
Exactly. But that's the thing. I remember reading like she said on that album, it's Educational Lauryn Hill. They was telling our engineers like, I don't want it to sound perfect, and there's parts where like she stumbles on a word and she kept it in because it's like that's that's how we do things. That's raw and organic. And so in terms of artistry, I'm more on that side of like I wish artists would lean more into that, because some of the artists we talked about before, that's if you were an alien, you might hear them at first and be like, that guy can't sing. That guy's a terrible. Bob Dylan has a terrible voice, but it's all like it's kind of like. People like that, the more you get into it, you realize that they're using that on the surface level awful sounding voice to even make a statement beyond even what they're saying.
I really like what you said about Lauryn Hill. That is such a
Jersey.
This is something that's actually really important to the practice of meditation and just studying Buddhism in general. It's we call this the grandparent mindset. When your grandparents are looking after you, it's generally they're sort of I guess stereotypically the grandparents are supposed to spoil their grandkids, right? And if the grandkid does something maybe that they're not supposed to or misbehaves, the grandparent they'll still scold them, but it will be a little bit more gentle on them than the parents maybe. It's this concept of being okay with our imperfections. Exactly. And I might be either saying the term wrong or this is the wrong name for the term, but in Japanese art, traditional Japanese art, there's this concept called wabi-sabi, and it sort of translates to go with the flow, and it means whenever you're creating, if you do something that's perhaps unintentional, you're not supposed to go in there and fix it. Right. It's there. It's their perspective that is that it's supposed to be there. That's a more genuine projection of yourself. And I didn't know that about Lauryn Hill. I mean, her art is amazing. It resonates on such a deep level across the board. I'm not even really into her style of music, but I still love her. I mean, I've seen her live a couple times. You know what I mean? She's incredible. She is. And
I like that saying though.
Wabi-sabi.
Wabi-sabi.
Yeah.
That might be my first tattoo.
I was thinking the same thing. But Shadi,
we the untattooed people, the only ones left. But yeah, no, I like that because go with the flow. That's kind of, Cass is recorded with me, so you know how my style when I record. I like to have that kind of be like, we're gonna go with that take or whatever. We're gonna just like wing it. There were times we recorded songs, right?
There were so many times when we would do something like 3 times in a row and just go with the very first one that we did.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I've heard of engineers making singers I know do takes like hundreds of times, and then they go back and be like, what, the first one actually sounded pretty good.
I was going to ask, how many times would you do the take before you, the first one's actually the best?
There's times.
Depends.
Depends.
Sometimes you just kind of know that you're probably going to go with the first one, but you're like, well, why don't we just try it a second time just in case?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then after that, you're like, nah. But then there are times when your head gets like too far into it, and this is kind of going back to what you were just talking about, which is like, you hear something and you're like, well, that wasn't perfect, let's do it again. And then you're like, oh, but now that other thing wasn't perfect, and you keep doing it and you keep doing it, and like at a certain point, you just have to go back and be like, you know what? It doesn't need to be any other way than how it was.
You can have like a picture for it in your mind.
Yeah.
Like every time you hear it, there's something that's like, oh, that's off from like the picture I have envisioned, and you try to go towards that, but then you accept that. I don't know.
When
that's a perfect picture that hard to be painted.
When that does happen to you guys, do you sort of like kick yourself like, oh man, we didn't need to do that too many times, or do you still see value in just going through it?
I've never felt regret about doing it so many times. Partly because those instances and also a lot of other things that I've experienced in life, like the whole no regrets. The path you took got you to where you are.
Absolutely.
But like that's that's true. It sounds cheesy, but
it's 100% true.
It's right. And sometimes you gotta do something else to make you realize that you wanted what you already had in the first place.
Absolutely. I think it's a really important lesson to learn that if you're happy with what you're doing in the present moment, that you have to accept all the bad with the good that happened to you and appreciate all the shitty things that happened to you as well, because it formed you to make who you are to this present day.
Yeah, of course.
That's the best part about it. Because I've done that. There are times where I lean into it, and that feels really good. I think we did that on the Crowember album, Joe, where like I'd record a verse and on the first take, and I remember y'all would be like, we listen back, like, what do we think about that? And I was like, fuck it, just go with the first one. So it feels, talking about it feels really good to harmonize with somebody who said that before. It's just, when you lean into that philosophy, it does feel really good to do the first take. And you might get the slightest inclination of like, but the perfect picture I have in my head that I have to make. And then you be like, no, I know how that goes. Let's just go with this.
Yeah. That's also a really good indicator of being able to tell if you're doing it for yourself or doing it for someone else.
Yes.
And I know that's a big thing in the music industry. It's a big thing in the
a lot of low self-esteem.
Acting industry. It's big in everything. And to be able to get to that point of self-acceptance and just peace with the work you've done, the more acceptance and at peace you are with
you gotta have your critics
yourself. And I think that also ends up usually being the best art.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, what mindset do you think is, I don't want to, for lack of a better word, of course you can have a combination of this. I don't mean to break it into an extreme polarity, but it seems like, we're sort of talking about two different mindsets. One is where you're able to go with the flow and you're not going to maybe dissect what you've just done so much. But then on the other hand, people might be from the school of thought was like, whoa, well, you have to constantly think about every little detail, or else that's going to make it better.
Right.
Do you think there's usefulness in balance of both of these mindsets, or would you say you tend to gravitate towards one side more than the other?
I think that it's incredibly important to have a good balance between those two things, because on one hand, and it kind of, I'm sure it depends on what you're doing and why you're doing it, but okay, for example, I do a lot of watercolor painting. And that is unlike other types of paint. Once you've made a brushstroke, like that's permanent.
Wow.
You can't take that away.
Right.
But it's also, so on one hand, you do have to kind of, carefully know and understand and plan out what you're going to do ahead of time.
Right.
But on the other hand, watercolor itself is, it's mixed with water, so it's flowy and it's gentle and it blends. So on the other hand, you also have to kind of let yourself relax a bit into that and be like, I do have my plan, but I also need to let these colors flow. And I think that relates to anything, writing,
absolutely,
singing, instruments.
Yeah.
What I love about watercolor as a medium, especially for for painting and fine art, is that it really seems to embody the breaking down the really in the way that's created, breaking down these divisions and barriers. And it seems like watercolor paintings are more beautiful when the colors they blend in together on their own. It really shows this. To me, it shows such the process of the artist and covering a spectrum.
It's also kind of a trick, though, because as we all know, some colors do not blend well together.
Oh, right.
So you do have to know which ones are going to go
absolutely.
where.
Like you were saying, you have to have the balance of you do need to think about this ahead of the time. If you just go in like with a bunch just 12 random colors, it's not going to look good.
Yeah, you get a brown mess.
Yeah, I know.
But if you're too rigid about it also, someone looking at it feels that they feel rigid looking at it.
It's the same in textiles. When I was a weaver, my first pieces were so weird because I literally would I knew nothing about art and I knew nothing about theory at all. So I would just pull random threads and just set them up on the warp and randomly almost, and then it would come out like, why does this look so weird? It's like, because I didn't think ahead of time. The philosophy of this weaving was that you come up with it as you go, but that's really just the pattern. You should have a foundation to rely on. If you don't have that foundation, it looks crazy.
Yeah, I think it's almost a kind of a difference between thought and execution. I feel like maybe our in thinking about what we're going to create, our thought should be a little more structured, and then our execution should be a little bit more loose once we've come to familiarize ourselves with our thoughts already. Because at that point, we as humans have a lot more control over our plans than we do how
the plans come out. Yeah.
Damn.
Wow. Yeah. So, Manny, in your medium, it seems like planning, is a big part of it in terms of producing. Would you say that's wrong? But where does I want to know where the flow aspect comes into your music? Because you do have to plan a lot, right? But there definitely is. Just in terms of, you explain it to me. Yeah.
I don't plan anything.
Because I'm wrong.
Just be water, right?
Well, sometimes an ideal, like in terms of plan, you'll get a sound in your head. If I'm producing a song, let's think just in terms of making a song, not the lyrics. The lyrics might be a little different, but I guess in both cases, you'll get something in your head, like you might get that in your head, and then I might figure out. That's it, I might figure out what I'm doing from there. In terms of just anecdotally, most of the stuff I've made, it just is me fiddling around on a keyboard, and then I find something that that sounds good.
But that's sort of like lightning in a bottle, though, in the sense that I feel like a lot of brilliant, art in general, but in this case, music and songwriting has come from very sometimes random sort of spontaneous things. I like the example of, just because I think it's the strangest one, doesn't relate to music, but it does relate to art. It's the same paradigm, if you will, where supposedly J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, who was very much kind of a starving artist at the time, claims that she was on the train and she saw a cow, and her looking at this cow just lightning in a bottle, right? Like, okay, Harry Potter. And then she just started writing down the manuscript for like what's one of the most successful stories of all time.
That's the thing, like ideas can hit you whenever. And there's also, it's kind of like both, especially when we're saying what's it like to play with other people, to sing with other people. You know, that's why, I mean, in terms of like the band, the pure rock band mentality, so many times if it's a group that's coming together, and I guess it maybe happens more if they're a band that's played together more, because they know how to kind of converse with each other in the language of music. The bassist might come in, hey guys, I got a bass line. And then, you know, and then the other guys will be like, the other people will be like, oh, that's cool, I can put this on top of it, you know? And they'll find their own thing to add to it, and that's kind of like it becomes a conversation. So, but like that's the thing, you can start just from the simplest lick that one person comes in with, and then it kind of becomes a conversation through that more natural flow of things happening, just through, you know, your natural musical reaction, and some of those beautiful songs come from that.
It kind of makes me think of the like evolution of, you know, what human beings have done with art and music specifically, because on one hand you have going back to, you know, like classical music,
right?
Like, you know that every single note of, you know, every piece that Beethoven ever made was thoroughly thought out and planned
to a surgical level.
Out to a surgical level, being very rigid with the rules of what, you know, and then because he had talent and experience and, you know, that perfect ear, he could then decide when it was okay to break the rules, and when it was okay to make, you know, crazy combinations of sounds that might not be, you know, expected, but ended up being beautiful because of, you know, how carefully he did plan that out.
Right.
Yeah. And then you go forward to, you know, say like rap. A lot of rappers do sit there and you know, write out the lyrics to their track. And then you have certain rappers who, because they're good at that and because they have, you know, experience and training, like, if you've ever seen like Eminem in a freestyle battle,
Spaghetti,
yeah, you know, like they take their abilities that they had and they're able to completely disregard that need to plan things out.
Right. What I think that just to go back a little bit to time what you're just saying, Cass, Joe, that term "lightning in a bottle," it really seems like this concept called satori, which isn't like, you know, reaching full nirvana, but it's basically a glimpse of enlightenment. Like you just had like a like, oh shit, I just
moment of clarity.
Wow, like I didn't realize that before. And what it seems like you're saying, Cass, is that the evolution of music, it starts from this place of extreme rigidity. You know, you study these classical systems, you know them to a T, and then all of your music should be this planned out, you know, grand, you know, harmonious thing. But that these guys had these moments where a light bulb, oh shit, I could do this and it would still work. It still works within the plan. And and really this is the same with any system of thought. And so, but this idea in Buddhism is that there's this thing called the master to disciple succession, whereas the master basically has these moments of satori, and then he's able to tell his students, oh, this is a better way to get there. It seems like these artists are doing the same thing. They're showing a way for these guys to take this, and then, you know, decade by decade, century by century, it evolves and just turns into something else, but it still has those roots.
Yeah, which is super cool, and also reminds you of why it's important to understand, you know, the history of whatever you're doing, and how, you know, you can't really, it's like in, you know, in music class or you know, in chorus, they're not going to give you a freestyle solo unless you clearly understand, the step before that.
Right.
Right.
And it's just it shows us the that we can't separate ourselves, even though we don't resonate with the sound anymore. We don't identify with it. We still can't separate ourselves from that. That we have to have respect, and we have to know that understanding this will help our current art form.
100%.
Yeah.
Manni, thanks for taking the lead on this and sharing us with your gifts.
Yeah,
Cass, thanks for joining the conversation. It was great to have you
Yeah,
on the
my
podcast.
pleasure. Super
Sharing
fun.
ideas.
Yeah. This
Thank-
will definitely be the
always
hopefully the
welcome.
first of many.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
our closest in proximity guest.
Adjacent.
Because you're right here.
Right, that's
Tangential
I'm here
guest.
all the
But,
time.
Exactly.
So.
Manni, before we wrap up, what do you have going on right now? What are some projects you're working on?
What don't I have going on? No, my main thing that I would love to plug, if you are interested in learning more about music, you should definitely try to take my course on music theory found on teachable.com. The site is artsandfun.teachable.com. You can find it there, and the course is called Music Theory Fundamentals for Songwriting. In general, you can follow my Instagram at manni.festo, MANNI, and then a period, FESTO. And I'll have links there. You can also check out my own music.
I was going to say, find him on
Please.
Spotify.
I'll be on Spotify. I put it.
I'm in there.
And you can hear Cassie.
Provember.
It says Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas, but it's her. And
Different person.
I think
Spotify was confused.
I think having the Mama Cass thing helps boost some fines. So
Just
it's a good thing in the end. But check it out again, MANNI space FESTO on whatever streaming device that you use, because I'm on all of them. And check it out. I dropped the album earlier this year, Quarantine Chronicles. Dropped another album even earlier this year, back when it feels like years ago, called Crowvember. Joseph was, of course, on that.
Yeah.
On that. Shout out to the Crows. And follow me on Instagram, and you can find all that good stuff.
All right, well, thanks, Manni, so much, and thanks for listening.
Of course. And let's take them out.
Yeah, let's take it home.
All right, sweet.